literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie and welcome to another episode of Booksmart. Since we started a new year, I continue my theme of delights and magical thinking with Ursula K. Le Guin's No Time to Spare, thinking about what matters. I've started the new year off with changes, either in my time usage, my thinking patterns, project goals. You get the picture. I thought No Time to Spare might be a good new year book to help put me back on a different track, a more productive track, a kinder track. Like the other two books of 2024 so far, this one was just so-so. Good, but didn't blow me away. I'm hoping this is not indicative of this new year. First, I must praise Le Guin. While I haven't read much of her work, there are two short stories that I adore that I've used in my classrooms all the time. The Ones Who Walk Away from a Malus and The Wife Story. The Ones Who Walk Away from a Malus paints a picture of a utopia that only exists because of the sacrifice of one child who suffers. It's this beautiful story that leaves the reader with much to ponder. Real-world applicability that doesn't have any good answer. The Wife Story is one I use when I'm teaching point of view. You think you're reading a run-of-the-mill werewolf story, but Le Guin surprises us with the point of view. I won't ruin it for you, but my students are always shocked once they realize it. Because I love her other stories so much, I thought No Time to Spare would be fulfilling, if not intriguing read. The back of the book stated that these are the things that mattered to her late in life. I'm not that old, but I have reached the point of my existence where you let go of things you used to think were so important when your priorities change and you are suddenly aware of your mortality. I thought Le Guin would straighten me out even more and steer me in wiser directions. She did, but not as much as I had hoped. The book is filled with pieces from her blog, so Le Guin fans have probably already read it and then some. Some of the essays, are they essays if it's a blog? I have no idea, but I don't want to call them posts now that they're in a book. Many of these essays do read like a blog, which was a little disappointing to me. If I wanted to read blogs, I would do so, but I'm reading a book. I knew this when I bought the book since it tells me so right on the back, but I guess I had high expectations for Le Guin, which is another recurring theme so far of 2024. I appear to have incredibly high expectations for the books I have read so far this year. I wonder why that is. I was delighted, thanks to Ross Gay's The Book of Delights, I have started referring to more things as delights because the word delights has such a delightful ring to it, to discover that Le Guin loves cats. So I adored the essays about Pard, her new cat, but those didn't necessarily contain any aha moments. These cat pieces definitely had a blog post tone to them, light reading that is simply enjoyable. But those aren't the selections I've chosen to read from today on Booksmart. Le Guin writes a lot about her readers, which is fun to read about considering I'm a reader. Her comments on teachers making students write to authors are funny, but the part I'm going to read is regarding the question of why she writes. It is a profound question when you think about it. Why do people write? I've even pondered that myself when I write. She says some authors do say for money, but she is addressing the question of meaning, and it's good. So here is the answer she has constructed in regards to why do you write? Meaning. This is perhaps the common note, the bane I am seeking. What is the meaning of this book, this event in the book, this story? Tell me what it means. But that's not my job, honey. That's your job. I know at least in part what my story means to me. It may well mean something quite different to you. And what it meant to me when I wrote it in 1970 may not at all be what it meant to me in 1990 or means to me in 2011. What it meant to anybody in 1995 might be quite different from what it will mean in 2022. What it means in Oregon may be incomprehensible in Istanbul, yet in Istanbul it may have a meaning I could never have intended. Meaning in art isn't the same as meaning in science. The meaning of the second law of thermodynamics, so long as the words are understood, isn't changed by who reads it or when or where. The meaning of Huckleberry Finn is. Writing is a risky business. No guarantees. You have to take the chance. I'm happy to take it. I love taking it. So my stuff gets misread, misunderstood, misinterpreted. So what? If it's the real stuff, it will survive almost any abuse other than being ignored, disappeared, not read. What it means to you is what it means to you. If you have trouble deciding what, if anything, it means to you, I can see why you might want to ask me, but please don't. Read reviewers, critics, bloggers, and scholars. They all write about what books mean to them, trying to explain a book to achieve a valid common understanding of it useful to other readers. That's their job, and some of them do it wonderfully well. It's a job I do as a reviewer and I enjoy it. But my job as a fiction writer is to write fiction, not to review it. Art isn't explanation. Art is what an artist does, not what an artist explains. That one page made the book worth it. Guin also writes about the current state of our society, at least the one in 2012, which seems so long ago. What prompts this blog post is an On This Day feature in the New York Times. Here's what it says and where she goes with it, and really think about us today. This is what the New York Times On This Day feature said. On October 5th, 1947, in the first televised White House address, President Truman asked Americans to refrain from eating meat on Tuesdays and poultry on Thursdays to help stockpile grain for starving people in Europe. Think about that. So, this is what fascinates her. What I'm working hard to imagine or remember is a country whose president asked his people not to eat beef on Tuesdays or chicken on Thursdays because there were starving people in Europe. The Second World War had left the European economy as well as its cities pretty much in ruins, and this president thought Americans would, A, see the connection between meat and grain, and B, be willing to forgo a luxury element of their diet in order to give away a more essential food to hungry foreigners on another continent, some of whom we'd been killing and some of whom had been killing us 2 years earlier. At the time, the request was laughed or sneered at by some and ignored by most. But still, can you imagine any president now asking the American people to deprive themselves of meat once or twice a week in order to stockpile grain to ship to hungry foreigners on another continent, some of them no doubt terrorists? Or asking us to refrain from meat now and then to provide more grain to programs and food banks for the 20 million Americans living in extreme poverty, which means malnutrition and hunger right now. Or actually asking us to do without anything for any reason. Something has changed. Can you imagine? Our world in 1947 had a ton of problems too, a ton. But wow, it makes you think. As the essay continues, she asks an important question. Can America go on living on spin and illusion, hot air and hogwash and still be my country? I don't know. Guin died in 2018, so she didn't get to witness all the spin and illusion, hot air and hogwash that followed. On Christmas Eve, we watched The End of All Things. I thought of this movie when I read this essay. Our biggest weakness is our inability to be tolerant and kind. Guin also has light essays that aren't related to her cat, like the one about vegetables. Some scientists believe that vegetables have feelings, veg empathy, as Guin refers to it. Her spunk and humor is classic Guin. Ultimately, we wouldn't live long if we stopped eating everything, and she's so funny about it in this subtle way. She ponders the act of hiring someone to read your mail, and that a someone is really a somebody, yet the bigger picture is envy, people who can hire servants with self-confidence that they're deserving of such servants. And then she'll really make you think on the legitimacy of all that we find on the internet when a quote is credited to her. When she's asked for permission to use a quote, she can't remember writing it. The quote in question is this, and you may have heard it. "The creative adult is the child who survived." Yet she never wrote that. After asking her readers for help, she finds out what she actually wrote. "I believe that maturity is not an outgrowing, but a growing up. That an adult is not a dead child, but a child who survived." Nothing about creativity. Even when she reaches out to people to tell them she never said that, it still exists on the internet, attributed to Guin. It will be there forever, one of the many problems of our digital age. Overall, the book mixes light topics with deeper ones, those that make you laugh with those that make you think. Her subtle sarcasm and funny anecdotes make for a breezy read, yet will leave you with something to relate to in your own life. However, the book didn't have as many profound points as I had liked. Her subtitle, "Thinking About What Matters," misled me, perhaps. Yet if she wrote these blogs between 2010 and 2016, she would have been in her 80s. My grandma lived to be 93. She was healthy and lived on her own, in her own house, until she was about 91. My grandma was not a writer by any means, but I think about what was important to her in those later years. I remember seeing a list of all the Wheel of Fortune puzzles on the pages of crossword puzzles. She preferred visitors staying no more than one night. Cardinals were her favorite birds. Maybe by that age, you weed out all the crap in life and focus on those delights. Le Guin wrote about cats and the overuse of the word fuck, which are those little things. And if Ross Gay's The Book of Delights taught me anything, it is those little things that matter most. We should share more delights than complaints. We should giggle much more than we do. If we did, we'd have less time for complaining. And instead of complaining, give people something to ponder. Maybe after reading such an insightful nugget, they'll make subtle changes in their own day-to-day life. Maybe if we all did that, spend more time thinking about what matters, what we're reading, and then questioning our own daily decisions, we might collectively make small changes that lead to better things, positive changes in our tumultuous world. And because No Time to Spare has me thinking about all these things and connecting it to the Book of Delights and even the mortality of the year of magical thinking, I conclude the book a good read. It's definitely worth the read, even if it didn't meet all my expectations. The goal of any book is to leave you, your reader, with something, preferably something applicable that makes them think, and even better if it makes them do something about it. As Le Guin wrote, what it means to you is what it means to you. And that's the whole point of reading, is it not? To find meaning in it that applies to your life. That's all for this episode. As always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.